Hello, everybody. Okay, I don't want to get us behind schedule, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have with us today Laurel Simmermeyer. Did I say that right? Okay, with Indiana 911. She is the deputy director, so please give her all of your attention and ask all the questions if you have them. If you're new and don't know what Indiana 911 is, she's the perfect person to explain it to you, okay? So let's welcome her. Okay. And forward on the clicker. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I understand there's a lot of new auditors, and I'm hoping that you have a lot of questions for me. Let's start with our agenda today. We're going to be talking about funding mechanisms and support for all of the PSAPs. And for those who don't understand, a PSAP is a public safety answering point. It's the dispatch center. We're going to talk about the hold harmless funding, and we're going to talk about the additional 90-10 distribution. And we're going to look at the combined funding insights, as well as talk about the distribution list that I maintain so that you can quietus the money into the 1222 fund once it's received. So just to start, for those that are new, our board was established by Indiana IC code. We ensure that the state's 911 system remains modern, reliable, and responsive. The board provides funding, oversight and accountability, operational and technical support, and innovative in 911 service delivery. The important thing, obviously, is the funding, and I'm hoping to ease some minds about the stability of the funding currently. Last year, our office received a call from a county who was consulting with their financial advisor, and he expressed concerns that the funding was unsustainable. A couple of months later, we received a call from another county advising that their financial advisor told them the same thing. So we done some research and found that that was not true, and we figured out why that was to be believed. So let's start with the hold harmless. The hold harmless is guaranteed funding that you receive on a monthly basis, and on the slide you can see that it has maintained. And the way that we've got to the amount of the hold harmless was in 2012, we had counties send us what they had collected in 2009, 10, and 11 for wireline funding, and we took what we collected at the state level for wireless funding and averaged those. And you can see that it has maintained over $60 million since 2012. When we move on to the 90-10, the 90-10 is divided 90% population and 10% equal share. And we currently use the 2020 census for the population that was just released a few years ago. 10% is equally distributed to each county. That fund is not guaranteed. As you can see on the chart, in fiscal year 15, there was not even an additional distribution sent because the funding was lower that year. And what affects that 90-10 also are our network costs, which, as you can imagine, continue to increase. But our office does a good job trying to maintain all of the other funding issues and try to spend cleverly. And that's so that what guess what I'm missing my point here. The 90-10 should not be thought of when you're preparing your budgets, because like it shows in 15, that funding was not even sent out. So there's two separate components to your funding. The 90-10 which is not guaranteed, and the hold harmless, which is guaranteed. So when you're working on your budgets, only consider what you get from the hold harmless, your guaranteed monthly revenue. You can see when, I can't get my next slide up.
Doesn't look like it's recognizing it. 1 minute. Did it go? No? It's right here. There you go.
Okay.
I don't know what happened here. Did we turn it off? I think we turned it off.
Now it's on.
Yeah, I think it's on.
All
That
right.
one's what you
Good.
wanted. Right?
Thank you. Yeah. So when we look at the hold harmless and the 90-10 combined, it is, you can kind of see how it fluctuates just a little bit, and that can maybe make a financial advisor believe that revenues are unsustainable, but I can guarantee you that we do what we can to make sure that you get what's yours, and then some if we can make that happen. The distribution list. So this is a database of emails that is maintained by our office. It needs to be updated. So if you know someone needs to be added or deleted, let me know and I can take care of that. There's a lot of auditors, treasurers, commissioners, 911 directors, sheriffs. It's a whole array of individuals who like to be notified once the deposit has been made into the 1222 fund. So if you know of any changes that need to be made, like I said, I know there's a lot of new auditors. If you would like to be added to that list, just let me know. There is also our website, in911.net. They're posted on there every month when they're deposited as well. You could always go to that website and print your receipt from there. And I'll leave some business cards if anybody needs my contact information, but you'll also have it on this slide. And I just am open for any questions you might have.
And while you guys are thinking of your question, I just want to say, so we do audit this fund. So how many of you, my past auditors are the ones that have been around since January, how many of you have gotten an email from our office asking for disbursements from the fund, from the 1222 fund? Okay, some of you might not get those. Sometimes they do go to dispatch, like if you guys can't handle it or your first deputy might get it. So whenever we look at these funds, statutorily, we need to look at them every single year and prepare a report. So every single time you guys get an email from us asking for us to send a list of transaction history for the 1222 fund. So when we're auditing it, we're looking at what you are receiving and what's going out. Then typically there's a follow-up question because you need to make sure that the 1222 funds are used for the statutory purposes, okay? And something that we work very close with Indiana 911 to do is to make sure what you're spending your funds for are allowable. Because again, we're auditors. We don't necessarily know every single thing that a dispatch center could need. So we communicate with Laurel constantly to say, hey, what can we use these funds for? Or if we have questions on your disbursements, we will send you a question and ask for supporting documentation. How many of you have gotten those emails asking for supporting documentation? Because typically we need to find the claim so that we can look at the invoice. Again, it's probably a purpose that's allowable, but sometimes those funds are used for things that are not allowable. So another resource that's great on Indiana 911's website is they have their statutory authority, but then they also have a guidelines that you guys break down with allowable uses. So if you guys are new, it's an amazing resource because you guys come into office and say like, what can I use the 1222 funds for? Well, the big thing is how many of you pay payroll out of that? Okay, some of you pay some supplies out of that. Some of you pay for phones to operate dispatch, things like that. So you have to look at statutory authority, but Laurel and the executive director, it's Jeff, right? Yeah, yes. Jeff. They keep updating that. So one of the things that's really cool about Laurel's job is they go to all 92 counties and talk with those dispatch centers. And they talk about concerns because there's another report that they also have to file with you guys talking about the funds just to run PSAP. Okay, because your 1222 fund can't support all of PSAP. So there's other funds that go into that, okay? So they also collect that information. There's additional reporting that goes to Indiana 911. So, I just wanted to give you guys some background because it's a fund that we pull and audit for all 92 counties every single year. And if you go to our website, there is a report that says, this is what we found. These are the ineligible expenditures, because if there are ineligible expenditures out of the 1222 fund, those funds have to be reimbursed. So if it's found by our agency and reported to the 911 board that there are ineligible expenses, we ask the county to reimburse that fund from the general fund, or however, like whatever an allowable use for that fund would be, okay? So we are looking at them. It's not something that's gone away statutorily, so we're looking at it every single year. So even if we're not in your county, when we're emailing you and asking you for that information, we're looking at that fund because we're required to prepare a report and give it to the Indiana 911 board, okay? So if you guys ever have questions, I know that someone locally in our office is doing that. I did that audit for I think for 4 years, 5 years. So I'm passionate about 1222 funds, okay, people? And so if you guys ever have questions, because sometimes dispatch says, I want to buy this, and I think we've gone away from it, but whenever the fund was new and people wanted to just keep spending from it, they would outfit cop cars. Well, how is that supporting PSAP operations? So that's when you guys see those claims come through for 1222 funds. I want you to go, okay, what are we statutorily allowed to spend the funds for? So I just want you guys thinking about that because it is something that we will report to them, and we will ask you guys to pay back the funds. And it goes in a report. It's real legit, okay, guys? So we just want you guys to know that we are looking at it. It hasn't gone away if statute changes, but I don't see it changing in the foreseeable future. Yeah.
in911.net.
Yes. And they do have, it's a great resource. I love that website. I used it all the time when I was auditing. Does anyone have any questions for Laurel? Me? You have it for 15 minutes. It just means I get to start talking about internal controls sooner. So you might want to ask Laurel some questions. You guys are just excited for internal controls. I know it. I see it. Well, let's thank Laurel for coming, driving all this way. Thank you, Laurel. We appreciate it. It depends. Oh, wait. Laurel, not to put you on the spot, do you know if there's an additional distribution coming soon this year?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. No, so we are audited, so our fiscal year ends on June 30th. And then we collect 911 fees from telephone providers 2 months in arrears. Okay. So we cannot be audited until September at the earliest. So we were just audited, getting final confirmation, but yes, there will be an additional distribution coming out probably the end of October, 1st in November.
Let me know when you get it. And when in doubt, scan again. Don't forget, sign out sheet. If you leave early today, sign out. But if you're here till 3 o'clock with us, don't sign out. I'm sorry, I do that a lot now because Marshall's 3, and we do thumbs up, okay? And it's both thumbs. And it's mostly at the most inconvenient times. Like he's in swim class, okay? This is the best part. I'm not swimming with him anymore. He's swimming with an instructor, but he can see me through the window. And when he does a good job and Miss Bree says, "Great job, Marshall," he will, while trying to swim, do this. And then you'll see him like sinking. And I'm like, "Don't, not now." And then he'll climb up on the wall and he'll go. And I'm like, "Yes, good job." Because, he can't hear me. I'm on this other side of the glass. So there's a lot of like miming where I'm like, "Sit down." And he's like, "I gotta pee." And I'm like, "No, you don't. You're a liar." Because he knows I have to come in there. Because if he threatens, then they're like, "You gotta come in here. Come in here." And I was like, "I know, I understand." Okay, did I waste the time and you got the QR code? She looks like she's in thought, so I think she's, you good? Okay. Okay. Do you guys want another picture of him before I start talking about internal controls? Okay. One moment then. Hold on. Okay, again, this is the first carousel photo you will see. We're at the zoo, okay? And don't worry. Do you guys want to know what my Halloween costume is? Okay, one moment. Okay. What'd you just say? Oh, yeah, no, he's a gorilla, okay? And he's a big gorilla. I have a video of him going, "Big gorilla." And I'm like, "You are a big gorilla." But I want you guys to know it's his first year picking out his costume. It's very serious. We spent hours on Amazon. Did you guys know that it's really hard to find a size 2T gorilla costume? It's very hard. I spent a month looking, okay? I had to go to Poshmark and buy a used costume because I could not find one in 2T. Because I said, "How about a monkey?" "No, mama. Gorilla? I be gorilla." "Okay, that's fine. You can be a gorilla, but mommy has to make that happen." So I made it happen. We've worn that costume everywhere. And when I say everywhere, he proudly walked into Chili's wearing it. And then when I said, "You might get some food on it," "No." I said, "We should take it off." And he was like, "Yes." I said, "We don't want to get it dirty." He sleeps with it. There's a rule, you can't sleep in it. It can sleep with you, though. So you'll see, it's very creepy on the camera because it's in black and white. You see his tiny little head in his bed, and then you see 2 eyes. And you're like, "It's a gorilla, Stacy. It's not someone else." And you're like, "It's fine." And Jesse, so my husband's at home with him, and he's like, he hasn't asked to sleep with the gorilla costume. And I said, "That's good, because it's becoming an unhealthy attachment." He hasn't asked to wear it to daycare yet, but it's coming. I know the day is coming, okay? But I surprised him with my banana costume. And when I say surprised, I bought it Prime Days. Yes, Todd? I do not. I know it looks like I would. It is in the truck. I'm not wearing it for you guys. But I'm driving straight from here Friday to go to a trunk or treat, and I'm surprising him in my gorilla costume. So I took a video of surprising him. So we were at my parents', and he was like, he's out there playing, and my mom kept saying, "Do you want to go put your costume on?" And he's like, "Where, mama?" And she's like, "Turn around." And I'm dressed as a banana. "Mama, banana." And it's like, "Mama is a banana." He goes, and I go, "What are you going to be?" He goes, "I'd be gorilla." And I was like, "Yes." And he goes, have fun. He always tells me, Mama, have fun. And I was like, yes, we have fun. Or he'd go, I happy. And I'm like, oh, good. And I'm like, but, and so the other day we had to walk around the campground. Like the Saturday, there was like 80 degrees. I had to run around a campground dressed as a banana when no other adults were dressed up. And all I had was a gorilla tugging me through a maze, and we did it like 50 times. I'm not exaggerating. My child is pouring sweat in his gorilla costume, and I'm like, you need to take that off. You're getting hot. Yes, Mama. And I go, can Mommy take off her banana? No. Fair. I will just be a banana today. And my husband, he just laughed and was like, he looks happy. And I'm like, he is happy because he has a giant banana. So, it is what it is. So that is your excitement for the day, and I've wasted enough time and we can talk about internal controls now. Deal? Okay. Yeah, Deb? Oh, I have more. You have to stay tomorrow, okay? And you have to stay this afternoon, and I'll give you one this afternoon, okay? We'll give you more photos. Because I think I took Blippi somewhere, because he has orange glasses. So he doesn't go out in public because he's like, I need things. You know that? He's 3, so he's like, I need my things. And you know what those things are? It's another gorilla story. See, Deb, you got me sidetracked because I have 7 minutes, okay? It's going to be short. He has a gorilla that he carries around, not a stuffed animal. We do not want fake gorilla things, okay? They have to be realistic. If it's not realistic, we don't want it. So it's this gorilla figurine. It's very hard, okay? It's not like it's squishy or anything. It is detailed gorilla. And it's so funny because it's the most awkward thing when you have to say its name in public. Because it's not gorilla, because we have a lot of gorillas, okay? This is his favorite gorilla, though. It's Daddy. So, I have to look at him and go, and again, your mom, and you're going, where did Daddy go? Where's Daddy at? And I'm like looking on the ground, and people are like, your husband's right. And I'm like, that's not who I'm looking for. I know where he's at, okay? He's close behind me, but I am looking for Daddy Gorilla. So now I have to say, do you have Daddy Gorilla? Yes, Mama. Okay, good. Because at Camp Oween, at the campsite with like 100 children, Daddy Gorilla went missing. I have never felt like I had a heart attack until that moment, because I was like, we won't be able to do anything now. We have to drive back to Cincinnati to buy this gorilla because it was only in the gift shop at the Cincinnati Zoo, okay? And then all of a sudden, our best friend, her name's Amy, she goes, don't worry. I think that's something back there. Or it's a spirit, I don't know. We're going to pretend we didn't hear it. But she goes, don't worry, I have Daddy. And I was like, good. So everyone knows, she's like, I picked it up just in case I didn't want a kid to swipe it. And I was like, I'd fight a kid for that thing. Like, I would be like, that's not yours. And I'd rip it from their hands, okay? I'd be like, my baby needs that gorilla. He needs Daddy, okay? So, okay. I'm done now. We're going to talk about internal controls, okay? Oh, there's my clicker. I don't know why I brought my phone up here. Okay. Hey, look, there's Paul. See, he's with us. Okay. So, internal controls. How many of you have been here a minute and love hearing me talk about internal controls? Do you see how I did that? Like your hand was already up and I asked the other question? Okay. We talk about internal controls because they are so important. However, remember the point of my presentation is I need to talk about repeat comments, okay? So I've read all the comments that were repeats, okay? Took me 2 days. There's a lot of pages. I'm a slow reader, okay? So whenever I'm reading the comments, I'm like, what is the biggest problem I'm seeing? Well, there's noncompliance. Well, when there's noncompliance, most of the time, or every time, there's an internal control deficiency, like Ricky talked about yesterday, okay? So we have noncompliance, which means something happened. Either there was an error or maybe misuse of a fund or we did something incorrectly. Well, what are your internal controls over those processes? After we have exit conferences, how many of you can confidently say when you leave that exit, you know exactly what that comment is about and how you are going to fix it? Can I have anyone say, I 100%, I understand that? Okay, most of you still have questions before you leave those exits and go, how am I going to fix that? So this is what I want you guys to think about as we go through this presentation, because we want you guys to understand these. As Ricky said, with repeat comments, they go to the audit subcommittee. There is a report, and it's live streamed. You guys can watch it. They're flipping through that report, and they are saying, why are all of these comments repeats? Why can't we fix these? How can we fix them? So that's what Ricky and I are here. We talk about it every single fall, I'm pretty sure, because I want to look at the most recent comments. And so I looked at all 2024 comments. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. All I did was summarize them on slides, okay? And we're talking about them so that we can try and fix them. And that's what you guys, again, I don't do your job. You're in a room full of people who do your jobs every single day. You all know what you're doing, but whenever it comes to the internal control processes, we need to stop and reflect and say, what did we do wrong and how do we fix it? Because you want that comment to go away. How many of you have repeats and you're like, I'm tired of getting written up on this comment. I'm tired of writing that corrective action plan. I get it, okay? Some of them are hard. So we're going to go through some of them, and it's inevitable that sometimes they're hard to fix because you guys could have inherited problems, okay? You probably inherited some type of problem, or maybe it's something you're not aware of. But what I kind of did with this presentation was I want to go through internal controls so that I can get you thinking about our internal controls over these repeat comments, okay? Because with all of them, there's internal control issues, okay? And so I have some statistics because it's not just like one of you in the room that's having the problem. It's multiple people. So it's the question of how are we not understanding how to fix it? Do we just not do we not understand how to fix it? Do we not understand the comment? I want to get down to the nitty-gritty. I want you guys to tell me, because it's, do we need to change how we do training? Is there something that you guys need specifically to help you fix these comments? So that's what I want you guys to be thinking about, because you have 2 conferences next year. What do you want us to teach you to help you fix these things? Is there something we can do? I mean, I've had several phone calls with auditors, clerks, treasurers, wanting to go over their comments. And my first thing is, what's your process? What are your internal controls? What are your procedures over this? And some of you go, I have it in writing. And some of you go, well, so-and-so does this, this, and this. But I'm like, what is every single thing that person does? Where is the review? Where is the approval? Because I need to help understand what your process is so we can figure out if you looked at how to fix it. Like, did you find out where in the process it messed up? And that's what Ricky was talking about. That goes back to our monitoring and our risk assessment, because it's what's the likeliness that this is going to happen again? Some of them are like one-offs. Like, it was just a crazy thing. The day was crazy. It happened. Someone just looked at it and it went through? Or is it something that's constantly happening and causing problems every single month? So this is what I want you guys to think about, okay? So you guys know what the definition over internal controls is. I wanted to put it in a slide because I always want to come back to, it's your process by which management, you guys, structures an organization to provide assurance that an entity operates effectively and efficiently, has reliable financial reporting systems, and complies with applicable laws and regulations. So within that definition, you guys need to make sure that your office is running. There's no hiccups. It's just going. You're doing it as quickly and as efficiently and effectively as possible, okay? Which is hard. That's why you guys rely on your people. You guys delegate those responsibilities to other people. That's fine. Good leaders delegate, because if you do it all on your own, that's a segregation of duties problem. However, if you delegate those tasks, you have processes in place, and you implement an internal control to review and approve what someone else is doing, what's the likeliness you're going to catch something and you're not going to have to go back and fix it? How many of you have to go back and fix things, and it's much harder to fix than if you would have done it the correct way the first time, okay? It's so much harder because you're like, what happened? And that's always, well, how did it happen? And you have to kind of go back. So, purpose for internal controls. So you want to combat misstatements by preventing opportunity, detecting fraud, errors, and omissions. Again, when we say fraud, everyone gets like, oh, fraud, people stealing. No, it's human error too. So this encompasses so many things. Again, when delegating those duties to people in your office, you guys, okay, how many of you have that one person in your office that's your go-to? You guys have those, right? Like she, most of the time it's a she or he, has been around forever and they know everything. And you're like, I'm going to go talk to her. I'm just going to say Patty. I'm going to go talk to Patty. Patty knows what's going on, okay? And then what happens if Patty's gone? Does it crumble? Or do you guys still run? Is it still effective? Is it still efficient? That's why we talk about cross-training. Cross-training is so important because, again, when something happens to those people, I'm not going to wish death on Patty. We're just going to say she goes on a month vacation, okay? She's got a lot of time. She's looking at retirement, and she just needs a break, okay? Because she does everything here. Well, when she's gone, if no one's cross-trained to know what on earth Patty does, how are you guys still operating your offices? Does it fall back on the auditor to where it's like, I now have to do everything? Or do you have someone who knows what Patty does? They might not do it perfectly. However, they know what Patty does. They know what needs to get done. They know the process is in place and it runs, okay? Maybe it's not as fast as Patty did it. However, it's fine. Everything goes through. So again, if you just have that one person doing everything, you trust them. It's fine to trust. Kind of like Fred said yesterday, or someone said, trust but verify. I think it was Melissa that said it. But trust but verify. It's something that we always do. It's very similar to what we do during audit because we audit your internal controls in place. You can tell me that you do it that way, but I have to see it. So that's why I want to stress is we have to see your internal controls. Because how many times have you guys been written up during audit and you're like, but I did that. And it's like, I can't see that you guys did your process. I can't see that someone prepared this and someone reviewed it. Okay? So remember, I think you guys are getting much better at that documentation because Ricky and I have been like, document, document, document. Because if we can't see it, how do we know it's being done? However, there is a difference between just documenting something, but not really looking at it. So I want you guys to think, like, with your internal controls in place, when that review is occurring, are we actually going through the motions and looking at it? Or are we just on autopilot? Because again, everyone in this room has families. You all have something outside that's, again, it's white noise, but now you're at work. You're at work now. Now you're like, okay, I need to make sure I do this. But sometimes it's a busy day. And this document's sitting on your desk, this one, and then you're like, okay, Patty did that. I'm sure it's fine. Sign, toss the paper aside. Or are they taking the time to look at it? So that's what we need to talk about because, again, fraud can happen with opportunity. So again, let's say Patty, we trust her. She's on vacation. But what if Patty is stealing money? Because she's the only one doing stuff. She's the only one doing stuff in your office, okay? And it's harder. You guys aren't supposed to be getting that cash, okay? The treasurer gets that cash. So you guys are like, well, that's not ever going to happen. But what if Patty is changing the checks' names to her name, or another bank that she opened, they're going over here, and she's just making sure, and that's her job. She's like, oh, well, after commissioners approve it, I'm just going to go and change the names. I'm going to have it go over here. Or maybe Patty's over your payroll too, and she just made a random employee, and it's going into her bank account. That's how she can afford this nice long month vacation. We trust her. She does everything great. I never have to think about her. However, what if she's pushing the money somewhere else? So she has that opportunity because she knows you trust her. She knows. She's like, they're not going to double check me. But she's away for that month. Stuff needs to happen. And let's say she did come up with that fictitious employee and payroll runs. Well, she's gone for a month. You could have 2 payroll runs that month. And then all of a sudden you have someone actually going, okay, well, I know how to run payroll. I'm going to run this. I'm going to look at these employees, and then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, who is Barbara Streisand? I don't know. You go, we don't have her. She's not an employee. Like, this is weird. But like Barbara, like, again, if you think about it, what if it's just Barbara S? It's abbreviated. You're like, Barb. Do we have Barb? Maybe in highway? I mean, I don't know all the people. I don't look at payroll every single time. Okay, maybe it gets through. Just pays it. Okay, well, cool. Patty's getting a paycheck. She's getting 2 paychecks while she's away. But then, payroll runs again, and you're like, that's really odd. I wonder why there's like 2 direct deposit bank accounts that are the same that are going over here. Because, Patty was like, I don't want to go set up a whole nother bank. I just want to use my bank. So I'm just going to set it up. No one's going to look at it because I upload that file. No one will double check it. But second check, and then you stop because you're doing that job because you're like, I need to make sure I do this right. Because anytime you have to do someone else's task, when they're cross-trained, you're like, well, I don't want to mess this up. Because like one day Patty's going to leave and like someone's going to have to do this. And if I can do this, I like doing this. This is a good job. I like this. So they want to do a good job. They have that drive to do a good job. Follow the processes, follow the procedures. But what if they catch it? Then they investigate it. Well, when Patty comes back, she's then called into office. See, she has the opportunity to do these things, okay? So it's always trust but verify. So you have your processes in place for a reason, and it's to detect a lot of things, okay? I'm not telling you to be suspicious of everybody, but it's trust but verify. They're county funds. We need to make sure that they're being used appropriately, okay? Ricky talked about, well, she had a slide of these. She didn't really go into detail about them, but if you're a new auditor and you're like, man, internal controls seem complicated, what I tried to do on this slide was summarize it to be like, here are the key components of internal controls. You have to have them all. If you don't have them all, it's not going to work, okay? Because you could set up the best processes and procedures, have the best employees, but let's say you don't communicate what you want them to do. How effectively is that going to work? It's all going to fall apart because you have these amazing people that are doing such a great job, but they're like, well, I didn't know that I was supposed to finish that. I thought that like someone else was going to do that. It's always you just believe like, oh, it's not me, it's someone else, right? And then all of a sudden, oh, I was supposed to do that, okay? So we'll briefly go through these. So control environment, tone at the top. This is for those new auditors, okay? So what are you doing in your offices to project onto your people in your offices? You want to do a good job. Are you coming in? Are you excited to be there? Are you wanting to do a good job? Do you want to, excited? You guys, some of you laughed, okay? We all need a paycheck, okay? And stuff has to get done. So there, you guys are the people to get that stuff done. You guys help run that county, okay? So you guys go in there, you're like, people are gonna need me, but stuff has to keep going, okay? So, but what are you projecting onto your staff? Are you coming in and saying, I don't want to be here? And your employees are like, yeah, I don't want to be here either. And then you guys just kind of sit there and like hang out and play cards. I don't know. I would hope not. Okay. Stuff still has to get done. But then they're going to be the people that are like, so what, payroll wasn't made? It doesn't matter. No, it does, because everyone's going to be in your office. Okay. So it's what are you projecting onto your employees to make them want to do a good job, okay? Risk assessment. Ricky talked about this, so I'm not going to go into great detail, but when we have those internal control findings, it's part of that going, okay, there was something that happened. I need to assess the risk around this. Like, was it just an error? And it was like a mistake, something very simple. Did I key a number wrong? What happened? Go back, look at it. What's the likeliness it could happen again and again and again, or was this a one-off instance? And the risk is relatively low over here. It's just something that you guys need to think about, okay? Control activities. Those are what we audit during what we look at. What are your processes and procedures in place? So the easiest one is the AFR, which, spoiler alert, it was the most amount of comments that I read for repeat comments, because there's a lot of pieces to the AFR, okay? I'm not surprised by that, because when we're telling you, it sounds easy. If I just say, I need you to go fill out the AFR, and you guys giggle and you're like, that thing takes me days, okay? Because you have to have a lot of information. You have to make sure you're reporting everything. You're collecting all your financial data, putting it in there. I'm also asking you to collect all your debt, all your loans, all your capital asset information, okay? I'm asking you to gather all of these things, and I'm asking you to do it to the best of your ability. And you guys are like, no, you're asking me to do it perfectly. I'm not perfect. I mean, I'm the first one to say that. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. So it's realistic that mistakes will happen, because if it's your first year in here, like you guys had to fill out, like if it was your first year in January, you were filling out an AFR from the prior person's financial information. You were having to find all of those things and then also figure out the AFR. That's a lot. So I'm not surprised by it. So what we need to think about today is, how can we reduce those comments? How can we make our AFR reporting better? That's an example. Again, I'm going to ask you guys, like, how many of you feel like it's really, like, you have a system that's down packed? Because does review and approval help you catch those things you left off? So it's your process and procedures. That's what we look at. But that's just an example of those activities. Because over the AFR, do you actually have someone that combs through that information in detail? Or is it just, well, I give it to her and she signs it? That's maybe why you have stuff's missing. That could be why. Or maybe she is looking for it, but she's not looking for everything that she needs. So information and communication, we already touched on this briefly. How are you guys talking to your people in your office about your internal controls? Are they aware? Did you ask them to document their processes? Do they know what's expected of them? How many of you can say that each employee in your office knows exactly what's expected of them? Every single, okay. Again, there's only a few people that are raising their hands. So if I'm not telling them what's expected of them, how am I going to expect that then? See what I mean? I just want your mind thinking. I'm not criticizing. That's not what I'm up here to do. I'm help you to think about it, okay? Monitoring activities, like kind of Ricky talked about. How are we looking at it? So AFR, you do it once a year, but did you sit down and go, okay, last audit I got a repeat finding on the AFR. Did I then go back and double check the next one I did? Did I say, okay, well, last year I missed some stuff. So did I kind of look at my processes and go, that's why I forgot and I left off debt. That's one of the big ones. I left off debt. Well, was I looking at in the right place? Did I know all the debt that I have? Is it all in one place? Like, what would make it so that I don't accidentally leave off debt? It's an accident. You just didn't know. You guys have a lot of things going on, okay? And this is just one of those pieces. So how are you monitoring that, okay? And we talk about segregation of duties. It just ensures things are getting done and reduces the risk of fraud, errors, and conflict of interest, but you're making sure that different individuals have different responsibilities. So we talked about that person, and you're like, I have that Patty, but does that Patty never get reviewed? Like, does anyone review Patty? Does anyone make sure that, like, she's doing what she's supposed to be doing and she's doing it correctly? Or we just let her go off and be free. And we're like, let Patty do her thing. No one mess with her, okay? So this is what we need to think about with segregation of duties. Is there a review and approval process, okay? Again, I know a lot of you have heard this stuff over and over again, but let's talk about documentation. So with documentation, we need to see it. So I put like a brief list up there. So signatures, stamps, emails, logs, checklists, initials. All of these things are things that we can see. How many of you have internal control so down packed that you have like all of it electronically? And you can say, we don't even do initials anymore. It's all electronic. And I know where that internal control is, and I can see that it was reviewed and approved on this day. This person, probably not. Okay, Hamilton County, keep your hand down. For everyone else in the room, you guys are probably still doing something like signatures, initials. Are some of you doing checklists, logs, something like that? None of you are raising your hands, and you guys are like, we don't do anything. Well, okay. Make a note. How many counties are here, Deb? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. But the reason I stress documentation is, what can we see? We have to trust but verify. We're going to ask you, so during your last audits, for those of you who had audits in 24, how many of you remember filling out or reviewing a form that said, these are my process and procedures over this? Okay, you guys get those. You probably wrote them, you looked at them, and you were like, this is the exact same thing that we did the previous year, or we didn't change anything. Okay, then we're going to look at that, and we're going to say, I need to verify that. I need to check that internal control. The easiest one is the AFR. I'm going to go pull whatever your AFR documents are, and whatever you say your internal control and where it is, I'm going to go look for it. I'm going to document if I see it. Well, if I don't see it, how many times have an FE come back to you and said, hey, I'm not like seeing what you're saying that you guys do. Like, I can't see that Patty prepares it and you sign off on it. That's what it says you do, but where can I see that? And then you go, you know what? We lost the paper last time, so this year we actually sent it via email. Let me go pull that email for you. So whenever the AFR was done, Patty sent me an email and said, AFR completed on this date, please go and review it. And then when you reviewed it, you emailed back, reviewed on this date, and you saved that email. Oh, okay. So your process and procedures did change from one year to the next because you're trying to reduce the risk of losing that internal control documentation again. And you have it now. It's just in a different format. Okay, thank you. I can see that. Sounds like an easy fix, right? Is that something like that's ever happened in your county that like you're like, I'm not going to lose that document again because I know I did it. I just can't find it. Because how many of you are still heavy paper offices? You guys have tons of, you guys are like, we don't use paper. We play cards. Just kidding. But documentation, I just want to stress that it's key because we're going to be looking for it during audit. Okay, so my internal control takeaways. They're designed and implemented by management. And I want to stress that because sometimes your field examiners come in and they're like, hey, I didn't see this. We can help you guys and say, this is what I saw another county do, okay? We can help you. Ricky and I can sit there and listen to your processes and say, hey, how about you try this? This is something you could do. However, your FEs should not be saying that's a bad internal control. It's your offices. They're your records, your responsibility. So you get a say in where your internal control processes are and procedures. What works for you? We could literally brainstorm. I did this one time with a clerk that kept getting a repeat finding on internal controls, and I'm like, it's okay. Let's not lose our mind. We'll figure this out. And we did. We went through all the things, and she was just like, well, I do that every single time, but I don't document that I do it. And I'm like, because you're on remote, you know your job. But you have people coming in that don't do your job every single day. We don't know every single piece of paper that you touch and where the control would best be placed. But once you step back and you look at it from a big view, you can say, this is my full process from beginning to end. This is going to work best for us, because maybe you have someone that's been in your office forever that's like, I don't like using computers and documenting everything there. I still want to do paper. Okay, then maybe the documentation electronically isn't going to work for you. That's fine. You have to do what works best for you guys, okay? So that's just the big stressor there, and we can't tell you your internal control is wrong. We can tell you that we don't see it or it's not working appropriately, okay? Those are different things. If I can't see it, it's lack of documentation. If it's not working properly, something happened. So assess why it's happening. But we're not ever going to tell you, like, well, your internal control worked, but I don't like it. Like, you can be like, oh, it's my internal control. Thank you for your advice. Thank you for that opinion. We all have one, okay? So they're yours. I want to stress that because it's your offices. You guys are the ones that are over this, okay? You should always be evolving and never changing, okay? Some processes work because you've had your people in your offices forever, okay? However, you get new people. Sometimes new people, they're younger. They think that they can do something better, okay? We can do that better. We can change that. Okay, you could. Maybe you need to assess the risk. Like, is your internal control maybe not effective? Or maybe you could do it better. So maybe you need to step back and say, could we do this better? Are we doing extra steps? Do both people need to be doing this exact same thing? Or is that the same job and we're just doing it twice? You need to step back and say, can I make it better or no? So that's just something I want you guys to think about as you're doing processes. It's easier for new people that come in because you guys are going, okay, what on earth am I supposed to be doing? And you're learning the process from start to finish. So then you go, okay, maybe next time we could change it. See if it works. See if it makes it better. Make sure that we do it differently. I think it could work. But if you've been there a while, you're like, no, my internal controls are effective, but are you reviewing them? Because sometimes people throw that wrench in that plan. Newer people, because they don't know everything that's expected of them, okay? So we just need to make sure that they're not as stagnant. They're moving pieces that are always evolving, because your offices, you guys are losing people and trying to do the same work or more with less. So that probably affects your internal controls drastically. Am I right? Because you guys have to then get creative with smaller offices. Segregation of duties, just key. Just make sure not one person's doing everything. I know you guys love your patties and they're great, but okay, take some stuff off of her. Let her retire if she wants to retire, okay? Remove the chain from her desk and let her go, okay? You guys, these are things we just need to make sure. Cross-training is great. We're always like, you need to have multiple people doing stuff, especially knowing how somebody does it, because things happen. And document. If we can't see it, we don't know that it's happening, okay? So let's talk about these repeat comments. Took me a while to get there, but I just am passionate about internal controls, people, okay? So here are corrective action plan statistics. So what I did was how many of you have submitted CAPs? It's online now. Okay, so you guys submit CAPs. Our CAP team reviews those, very similar to like what Ricky was talking about yesterday. You probably get an email from Anthony or Allison. from the CAP email. That's typically where those communications come from. But I asked Anthony, I said, hey, I want to know how many CAPs have we had since 2022, 2023, and 2024. So we came up with a total of 220 corrective action plans that were submitted since then. These are just for auditors. I took everybody else out of it. I just wanted to know about you guys, because I started training in 2022. I just wanted to see, have we gotten better? How many have been submitted? How many are still outstanding? That's what I wanted to know, because I love statistics, okay? So in 2022, there were 62 corrective action plans. And when I'm talking about corrective action plans, these are only for repeat comments. So it's not a first offense. It's this comment has appeared in a prior report, a prior management letter that you got. It keeps appearing, okay? So it's not like a one-off instance where you messed up one time. These are the things that we continually have issues with, okay? So in 2022, we had 62. In 2023, we had 96. In 2024, we had 62. Good job, Ricky and me. It's our training, isn't it? It is what it is. You guys can say that. You can say that. Yeah, Stacy, it's you. Fine. None of you wanted me to give me that. Okay. So of those 220, there are 62 CAPs that have been verified. That's great. That's a lot. That's over half. However, we still have 38% of CAPs that are still outstanding. And when I say outstanding, it means we haven't submitted anything. You guys have just exited, so those are in there. So if you just exited and you haven't completed your corrective action plan, that's included in the list. So that's a little unfair. But there are some that are past the 6-month deadline, and there's been no support provided to show that you have corrected it. Remember, Ricky talked about turning all that information in, because how many of you that have outstanding CAPs keep getting emails from, I think it's caps@sboa.in.gov, that say, hey, you have a late corrective action plan? You don't have to raise your hand. But if you're getting those, it's not spam, okay? It's not a scam. They are being auto-generated. So our system is sending out those emails. After 6 months, if we don't get something, it generates an email. And that's typically, if you guys email me, and because some of you probably inherited corrective action plans. You probably didn't even write them, possibly. So if you didn't write them, how are you going to know what you said was going to fix it? If that's the case and you're like, I'm getting those emails, but I don't even know what I submitted, come talk to us offline. We'll have a discussion. I'll go talk to Anthony. I'll get the CAP that you submitted, and I can send you a copy of it, okay? All of this can be fixed. But the thing is, we need to just make sure those outstanding CAPs, they're getting resolved. Because like Ricky said, it goes to the audit subcommittee. So they're flipping through these, and they're being like, these comments, like, this one is a fourth, fifth time offender. Why are we not fixing these comments, okay? And again, is it the process? Well, it's probably internal control based if it's compliance. So we need to figure out why we're not fixing it, okay? I just wanted to give you guys a fun little chart. It's going to be really hard to see, so I'll just read it to you. So the purple, hold on, it's black and white over here. One moment. I'm going to have to go down to my laptop. Okay, so that purple section is all the other comments. That's just a compilation of a whole bunch of comments, so that's not the biggest slice, okay? The dark blue section, or dark green, so that 3%, that's certification over internal controls. There's like 2 comments. I'm not super worried about that. We're going to go over it. The annual financial report is that big section, that 25, that dark blue section, that's the AFR comments, okay? We're going to talk about that shortly. The orange section is capital assets. And I know you guys love capital assets so much. The orange one says 18, and AFR is 25% of the comments are that. The light blue section, internal controls over financial transactions and reporting, okay? So that is 14%. And then overdrawn cash balances is that 5% lime green sliver, okay? So, what do you think we're going to talk about next, guys? We're going to talk about repeat comments by area. So I tried to break it down for you, and you could kind of see. So everything on the right-hand side of the screen where it says AFR and all of those are my big areas that we just read off, okay? In that other sliver, those are all my comments that are all the catch-all things. It's something that they're repeat comments, but not every county is dealing with those issues, okay? But it doesn't mean it couldn't happen, so that's why I want to talk about it, okay? So let's get into the nitty-gritty, okay? So AFR. How many of you have a review and approval process that's in place and you got it down packed and you prepare it or someone else in your office does and there's a review and approval process? Okay, tons of you. How many of you don't have to raise your hand, is it just you doing it? Could be just you doing it, because there are some comments where there were no internal controls in place and just one person was doing it. So there's no review and approval process. Nothing that we could physically see during audit, okay? That's only a couple of the comments. I want to say that was like 2 or 3 of them. Most of you do have internal controls in place. However, it's that second bullet point. Not established effective internal controls over the AFR. Okay, for the information entered into Gateway. This is going to sound like a very similar comment that Ricky's going to talk about tomorrow, because how many of you have federal audits? Okay, well, when you get, this is a Section 1 finding, okay, and you're like, oh, there's sections now? There always has been, but it's how you guys read your reports, okay? So whenever you're looking at your reports, you're going to get a Section 1 finding. It's going to talk about the AFR. Well, you also will have a Section 2 finding when you have federal, because it flows through. It affects your grants. It affects those things. So again, you will most likely always have, well, definitely have, Section 1 and Section 2, especially if, how many of you have grief over those grant sections and those AFRs? Okay, you guys got beef with those, okay? It happens. I can't say I would do the job perfectly. Ricky, maybe. Ricky would, that's probably like her dream job. She's like, I'd love to work with grants every single day of my life. Not me. I will stop talking about it. She stole my thunder yesterday, okay? So I'm just stealing a little bit back. Put that back there. I don't want to hold it. Okay, so when we're thinking about the AFR, the sections listed underneath your financial data. So that financial data by fund, that's just uploaded into the system. How many of you actually still manually enter that information? Okay. Girl, solidarity, that's crazy. Because you probably have to have a double check, because that's a lot of manual entry where human error could happen. So you probably have an internal control in place to make sure and do a double check. But how many of you just go, I upload it? And do you look at it? Okay. Look at you. Yes, thank you. This is what I want, guys. Okay, answer me. So you guys need to look at it. But are we looking at every single fund? Every single one. Okay. What about investments? How are you guys making sure you have your investments entered into Gateway? Are you guys like, that's not me? I don't care about those. Yeah, what are those? Yeah, exactly. No, but it is something that we see very commonly in these comments is investments are left off. Oops. We need to make sure we have those in there. Because then whenever, for those of you that have an internal control on your investments, can anyone share that with me? Because a lot of investments are left off. Does anyone feel like they have a solid one? Come on, give me something, guys. We have 25 more minutes, and I can just stare at you for those, okay? Does anyone want to tell me what their control over investments is? Fine, I'm going to make you talk at some point. Okay, what about capital assets? Yeah, me too, gross. But how do you make sure that all of that information is entered correctly? Or do you just get documents and say, that's the papers I have? Okay. Some of you were like, yeah, that's what I do. Fair. I appreciate the honesty. This is a safe space, okay? No judgment here, okay? I did a gibbon sound for you guys yesterday. Give me more, okay? Give me more. And honestly, that's one of Marshall's favorite songs from Britney Spears. You guys know what I'm talking about? Give me more. He goes, no, I'm not singing it. He only sings the part that says, give me more, give me more. He's really cute. I know I did. I'm not a good singer. And if you guys know how that song starts, I'm not Mother of the Year. The music video is so bad. So, but I do need you guys to give me more, okay? And I will record Marshall saying it. Next time I'll play it into the microphone. I'll be like, give me more. Come on. So, but with capital assets, it's what supporting documentation do you have to make sure that you're entering it into the AFR correctly, okay? Leases and debt. There's lots of comments where debt's left off. How are we checking that? Are we looking at it? Are you guys like, well, it rolls over. I forgot about that new debt issuance. Oops. What's our double check for that? How are we making sure that information's right? What if you paid off debt, but you left it on there? What's our double check to make sure it's either being added or removed? Maybe you don't have something in place. That's just what I want you guys to think about these things, okay? And grants. I'm not stealing Ricky's thunder. So, next slide. Okay, capital assets. This is where I wanted to live anyway, okay? So, capital assets. Since we all said, ugh, I'm glad I have it as a slide. We're going to talk about it. Okay, so, updated assets listing not provided. So, when you get that comment and it says that, just, you guys, it wasn't provided to the audit team. You didn't show them how that it was updated. You maybe said, I updated it, but there was no documentation for it that we could look at during audit. Because remember, when we're looking at capital assets, they are your records. And we are saying is what you put in the AFR, what your records show. That's all we're doing. And sometimes if the FE's not understanding what they're looking at, sit down and be like, this is where I got that number. This is where I got that number. You want to make sure it's like, if they're not understanding, explain to them what, like where you're getting your numbers. Like, this is all my support, but this is how I created this, okay? Additions and deletions were not included. So, what's your process when you buy something? Or a department buys something? Do they just buy it and not tell you about it? See, that's how the comment, so unfortunately that does happen. Okay, for those counties, because like Deb's back there, which I'm just going to pick on Deb, because she's like nodding with me. She's like, I have something. So what happens? How do you fix that? How do we get those departments to tell me when they bought something? How many of you have a capital asset policy that details out when assets are purchased, this is your process? Do you guys have, yeah. Because, and I'm just asking, after that policy was implemented and you communicated it, did they all go, oh, that's our responsibility? Because what we talked about yesterday, when you do that and you push that responsibility to them and you have a policy that says the departments are responsible for doing the inventory, keeping track of the additions and deletions, how is that comment going to be a comment for you whenever it was their responsibility? Like Ricky said, it helps us to write the comment because you guys can go, it's not my responsibility. But where does it say that it's their responsibility? Because sometimes whenever you make it their responsibility, they're aware that they need to do it, it gets better. You're telling them it needs to be done. And then, I mean, Deb, you can just shake your head. At the end of the year, do you just like send an email and be like, hey, I need all of that stuff, I'm preparing the AFR, or does your policy detail out what they're supposed to do once it's done? Both? Okay. So Policy dictates, and you also send an email out to be like, get me that stuff. And you probably have a deadline, because how many of you are going, well, I was waiting till the last minute, but I didn't want my AFR to be late, so I just didn't add their stuff. That does happen sometimes. You're like, I'm waiting on another office, however, they didn't get it to me. Whose responsibility is it, okay? Listing excluded assets, just stuff wasn't there. Because how many times have you had FEs come in and say, hey, I need help find this asset? And then they come back to you and they go, I couldn't find it. Well, then that leads to the question, what are your policies and procedures over inventory? Because what if they're inventorying by just looking at the list and going, yeah, that all should be there, but they're not checking that it's there. Like they didn't physically put eyes on it. Departments are busy too, but the internal control might not work, obviously, because it's not making it back to you. So you're trying to do the process, however, they're not doing their part and going and checking. So it's like, was it an issue with the employee just not wanting to do it? Or did they not know that when they were handed that list for inventory, they were supposed to go and physically find those things? Okay? That's a question. There was a funny time at a town that had a sewer utility, or a waste station. And I was looking for this giant drum, like giant. And I was like, where is that? And the guy goes, in the ground. There's no number, but it's like right there. And I'm like, I'm good, thank you though. So again, we have to go out and we look for those assets, okay? When we do that, this is how we come up with what we're not finding, what we're not seeing, and we have to look and see why, okay? So no evidence of inventory being completed every 2 years. Yes?
I just want to make a suggestion of what we've done to help me remember. I have a recurring calendar reminder on October 1st every year to send out an email to all the department heads that it's their responsibility to make sure their inventory and assets are updated by November 1st for me. And we do all of ours through Data Pit Stop. So I can log in and see who has actually logged in and looked and made checks, and they're responsible to send an email back to me telling me they've done that, and then I print that and have that as my documentation that it's on them. But we also have the ordinance that states that it's their responsibility. It's just a matter of you remembering to do that. Yeah. So calendar reminders, recurring, are a good thing when you only have to do things once a year.
Very true, because you guys are doing a lot of things. So if you set that reminder to be like, oh yeah, maybe your job is then just to push them to go do it, and you're reminding them. So you can just shake your head. Has that helped you with your assets? Okay, I would assume so, because again, you're shifting the responsibility. You're just reminding everybody, hey, it needs to be done, and giving them a deadline. So okay, internal controls. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. These are over financial close and reporting. So there was no internal controls in place. I think this was like one county. So there was nothing in place to make sure that anyone was looking at the AFR, okay, at that end of year process. The one that I was seeing the most is lack of segregation of duties. Just one person doing it, okay? And controls were not affected and did not detect or allow for corrections and errors to be submitted. Because again, whenever you have those AFR comments, because stuff's being missed and we're missing stuff, that's a compliance issue. However, there's lack of internal controls on top of that. Every time something is being missed compliance-wise, it's because you didn't have a control in place. There was nothing there to make sure that it didn't get caught, okay? Okay, MVH restricted. How many of you love this? Love this so much. Okay, so there were several comments. I'm not going to say there were tons. this kind of fell in those other categories, but we were sent a couple questions about MVH restricted, so I wanted to spend some time specifically talking about it. So one of the things was payroll activities were not construction, reconstruction, and or preservation. So to fix this, how do you guys know what needs to be paid out of restricted or unrestricted? We have to have documentation. If you don't have the documentation, how can you say that it is for construction, reconstruction, or preservation? There has to be timesheets or something coming from your highway department showing you that these payroll hours were directly related to construction, reconstruction, or preservation. Okay? And when you don't have that, from an audit standpoint, how can we say that was an appropriate use of funds? Okay? So again, we got to pay our people, but we need to make sure we're paying it out of the right fund. And from your guys' perspective, it's saying, what documentation do I need to make sure I'm paying all payroll-related restricted over here? Do you have support for that? And if you don't, how many of you go right back to the highway department and say, where is the timesheets that show me that this is for construction, reconstruction, and preservation? We have to make sure that we're going back, because if you don't have that documentation during audit, I can't say it's an appropriate use of funds. At that point, you have lack of supporting documentation, okay? So there was only one instance where the fund it was omitted. That was another instance. Like, it was just left off. That's accident. That happens, okay? We just need to go back and double check our AFR. Do we have all the funds there? For not reported in a separate fund, we just saw it as MVH, okay? That was like one time. It's not a big deal. You guys know it needs to be reported as unrestricted, restricted. Those need to be two funds. And the other big thing was lack of supporting documentation for purchases of bulk highway materials, equipment, and vehicles. Very similar to payroll, okay? The question, we get lots of questions for MVH restricted, and it's very general. Can I buy this? Okay, well, if it's a vehicle, are you only going to use it for construction, reconstruction, and preservation? Or are you going to use it for something else too? That's always my question we ask back. And if they say, well, it could be used for other things, then my question back is, then how, you can use it for other things, then how are you breaking down the cost to say, since realistically half of the time we're going to use it for construction, but the other half of the time we're going to use it for something that's not related to restricted uses, maybe that's how you're splitting that purchase. But my question to you is, how are you documenting it? What are you showing the field examiners for the breakdown of that? What is highway giving you? Because if you're not getting enough, then you guys have the right, whenever you're looking at those claims, to say, how is it an appropriate use of funds? Okay? And how many of you do ask that? Be like, this doesn't look like an appropriate use of funds. You guys can ask the questions. You guys sometimes send us claims and have us look at them and say, from an audit standpoint, is this an appropriate use of funds? You're allowed to ask that question. It's your guys' responsibility to audit those claims and certify them. And in that process, you're saying, is it an allowable use of funds, yes or no? And if that's not part of your process, then is that where a control is breaking down? Are funds being used for other things that's not an allowable use? Just things to think about. So does anyone have questions on MVH restricted? If you want to ask them during Q&A tomorrow, we can talk about it more. But those are really the only comments that I saw. And I do want to say during audit, I think someone from the association sent me a question that was going around for MVH restricted funds. So it's up to you guys how you pay payroll for unrestricted and restricted. We need that documentation for restricted, okay? It's an allowable use to pay payroll if they work on construction, reconstruction, and preservation, okay? from an audit standpoint, we can't come in and tell you how you are to pay your people from MVH. That's a management decision. That's not within our scope and not what we should be doing. We should not be telling you guys how you're to pay those people, okay? We shouldn't be coming in and telling you can only pay it from unrestricted, okay? Because how many of you run out of those unrestricted funds really, really fast and then have restricted funds left? Yeah, because unrestricted is easy. Restricted, you have to go through and look at everything. But have you guys delegated some of that to the highway department to say, hey, we're getting close on this fund. We need to do a correction of error and move some expenses. We need to move those expenses to restricted so that they're coming out of the restricted fund so that we have funds in unrestricted. Do you guys have a process in place to do that? Is someone watching that fund? Because sometimes at the end of the year, you guys call and you're like, my unrestricted is negative. And I'm like, have you went back and looked at your expenses? Because can you shift can you shift it to restricted? Is an allowable use of funds? Because sometimes it's just easy to spend out of unrestricted, and that's probably how the highway department submits their claims. But are we going back through those payroll that's for construction, reconstruction, and preservation to get to do that? So that's something we need to think about, okay? So I'm gonna run through the other comments, but annual engagement uploads, you guys know you need to be doing those, okay? We need to make sure that all of our annual uploads are uploaded, okay? What are your internal controls over that? Who in your office is responsible for it? And then who's the person making sure it's getting done? Condition of records, duplicate entries for receipts and disbursements. It's not, there's like one comment about that. Certification on internal control standards. So when you guys get this comment, the certification is on that little box in Gateway. When you answer those questions, it's at the very bottom, and there's a question that says, like, I certify that all employees have received the internal control training in compliance with 511, 127, blah, 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 blah. Okay? The blah, blah, blah is there. Okay? But you're just checking the box, but how are you making sure that all new people that came in are watching that internal control video? Did you guys know that video's new? It's updated. It doesn't have me in it, so I mean, I'm not saying it's better video, but I'm saying you guys always are like, can I get a better video? And I'm not saying it's funnier. It's internal control standards, okay? We can't, it's just, it is what it is. But it is a different video. It has more graphics and different images. It's really cool. Cool. You know, cool. So, how are we making sure people are watching that video? Are we making sure that that's getting done? If not, what's the internal control process in place to do that, okay? Late submission of AFR 100R, get it in on time. You guys got it. Transfers between funds, we talked about this yesterday, not gonna go in depth about it. You need authority to transfer to funds. You need that statutory authority. If you don't have it, you can't do the transfer, okay? Overdrawn cash balances. I'm going to talk about this tomorrow when we talk of end of year processes, but there are a lot of comments that there's just funds that are negative. And most of the time they're not just grant funds, they're payroll funds. Why are our payroll funds going negative? What process do we have in place to make sure they're not going negative at the end of the year? Are we looking at that? Is that something you're actively doing? What are your process and procedures in place over it? There's only a couple comments on reconcilement of the monthly financial statement, Form 61. I think we've trained on this. There's only 2 comments. You guys are doing amazing now reconciling with your treasurer. We just want to say keep it up, keep reconciling, do it timely. If you have variances, talk about it. Okay, just talk about it. What, did they miss something? Did you miss something? Where is the variance? Isolate it, correct it, things like that, okay? So let's go, board minutes. That one was specific. Just make sure your board minutes are typed up, submitted. Citizens want those board minutes, okay? I know you guys are live streaming now, which Sometimes they would much rather watch the live stream, but there's a lot of them that still want the board minutes. So just make sure they're typed up, they're timely, they're showing the actions of those boards, and that you can actually see what's happening, okay? Credit cards, that's a sticky one. However, there's only one. I feel like you guys have really gotten your credit card, you guys have fixed that very well. So compensation and benefits, we can talk about this more if you guys want to, but it's really just making sure that all compensation is included on the salary ordinance, okay? Is the rate of pay what you're paying them? Is there internal control in place to make sure they're being paid appropriately, okay? And that it's all included on there, okay? It should be all inclusive, because how are you going to budget for that compensation if it's not there, okay? So, oh, I'm missing a meeting, I guess. I don't know. What time is it? It's 1 o'clock? Who went over yesterday? Kay? Did I do that to you?
Except for I wasn't standing between them and lunch.
I have 3 minutes, okay? Calm down. Only I can tell her to calm down. Okay. So, corrective action plans. My one last thought I want to leave you guys with. Everything in the slides tells you how to do it, okay? But for corrective action plans, I'm only talking about those repeat comments. So if you really think you have a repeat comment like hanging out there, come see me today, tomorrow. I'll check the list. We'll talk about what it's about, and we can create a plan to get it submitted, okay, for corrective action. But it's only repeat comments. So if your comment doesn't have the verbiage at the top that says this is a repeat comment that appeared in prior report and it lists out a number, if it doesn't have that, it's not a repeat comment, okay? And so I want to forward to what's included in a CAP. Ricky talked about this briefly yesterday, but our CAP team meets. So there is a group of people that meet and talk about corrective action plans, okay? And they talk about how are we going to get these fixed? And we talk about it, and the main thing we're seeing is people are submitting corrective action plans, but it's not a plan. So again, the reason we talk about internal controls, analyzing what happened, and figuring out how to fix it, the plan just can't be, I'm going to fix it, and click submit, okay? You have to say, how are you going to fix it? I am going to do this, this, and this, and this, and we're now doing this. Then, show me. If you can't show me how you're going to fix it, how can we verify that you did do it, okay? Because that's the second part of that. You guys need to submit a plan, and you need to say how you're going to do it, but if it's not detailed enough, our CAP team will kick it back to you and say that's not sufficient. So ask the questions when you submit it. Then if you've already fixed it, and you put in there that you're going to have it done in like 1 to 2 months, if you have it done, submit that documentation and show them how you fixed it, okay? That's the big part, because I think I step in a lot with officials that don't understand the comment and want to know how to write a corrective action plan. I can help you guys brainstorm, but it's your plan. So if we make a plan that's not going to work for you, you need to make it realistic. We need to make sure it's attainable, okay? And in the last slide, I included, or the second to last slide, the third slide, sorry, submitting CAPs. I included the link on there for you guys because it's all electronic now. Okay, they should be giving you all the instructions at exit. However, some of you don't get it. Okay, so it's in the slide for you. And my last slide is just takeaways. So, okay, Jen, we can break for lunch and it comes to you. Thank you guys.